everybody, it's Lisa here, Connecticut Worms and Gardens. You're about to see the latest update on the raw pork chop that I put in my urban worm bag. Before I go into the update, I wanted to give a thank you and a shout out over to AJ at the channel AJ's Green Topics. If you haven't already checked out his channel, or if you're not yet a subscriber or member, I encourage you to take the time to go visit it. AJ is got a great personality and some incredible content. He does worm videos, his and that of others. He recently had an interview with Gaetano of northeastworms.com rather, and I have seen him do other interviews in the past. One was one that I learned a lot from and was pertaining to the raising of black soldier flies, and he has a great gardening series, lots of tips and updates there. So again, it's AJ of AJ's Green Topics. I recently became a premium subscriber of his channel, which is only 99 cents. Let me tell you, it's worth it. I just got a really beautiful card and note in the mail from him with a packet of heirloom seeds. And although the post office beat it up a bit, it's still beautiful and arrived to me with the insides in great shape. So AJ, thank you very much. And for everyone else, please check out AJ's Green Topics. You will not be disappointed. Welcome back, viewers. You know what time it is? Time to check the pork chop. It's pork chop o'clock. Now we see our thermometer. Oh, that didn't work, did it? Still at 100 degrees. And this is pretty darn hot. Our comfrey root is loving it because it's not buried very deep. It's got a plethora of new growth. And our piranhas are still gathered at the surface, ready to pounce. And I suspect, oh, let me try to get underneath here. I suspect, look at this, the pure worms. I suspect some are already eating the meat. We'll figure that part out in a second. But just grabbing anywhere on the top. Look at how healthy and happy the worms are. A little bit of bedding, scrape it. Now, if you'll notice, this material at the top, it's as fine, other than the paper, it's as fine as castings that I could have put through a 64th inch screen. Not the actual paper that's left, but what is the brown castings. And the reason for that is these worms have been hanging out here. Hanging out like a shark circling something to be able to kill it finally. So they're eating and re-eating and re-eating and making this material finer and finer and finer, which is exactly what happens on the forest floor. And I often refer to this urban worm bag as being similar to the forest floor because of the way I run it. The contents are composted and vermicomposted a little differently. And it's a very unique thing, and I'm really enjoying this experiment because I know the outcome, and I'm glad to be able to do it for you. Well, I know the outcome not of this one, but of all the others that I have done this to, and I know how positive it will be, so I'm glad I can do this to give other people the confidence, or should I say, to take away the fear. So let me pull this out so I don't do like I did last time and dig around and stab myself. That's not a whole lot of fun. Now, I'm not using a glove this time. This meat is going to be broken down to the point where, even though it may still have an odor, it's not going to have an odor on my hand at all. Okay, I can smell. Yep, I can smell it. Here's some of the goo. See the worms? Okay. Here's pork chop. Here is pork chop. Now look at how little is left of pork chop. Here's the bone. Here's the bone from the bone-in center cut pork chop. Here's the little bit of meat that's left on it that does smell like roadkill. Look at this bone. Hold on. Let me focus. Look at how picked clean this side is already. Now I'm going to dig, because probably, whoops, I'm sorry about that. Probably when I just pulled this out, it is possible some of the meat fell off it. Yes, okay. Here is, nope, I thought that was a hunk of meat. That's just really compacted. No, this here, this is a piece of meat. Oh, the phone is a piece of junk. This is a piece of meat that is beyond, it's like meat with a cocoon embedded in it that's wet and pretty much eaten. So let's keep going. I'm actually going to stop this video and start it again instantly because my phone is not focusing. Okay, I started without even moving the phone. Hopefully now it's focusing. Okay, let's keep going down here. That's a little tiny piece of meat right there. And one thing you'll notice is the presence of worms. And while I could tell you this is quite warm, it's nowhere near as hot as it was last time, which is why the worms, and you can see from the fluorescent hue there, we've got an African nightcrawler right next to an Indian blue worm. So the two worms that love the heat the most. Now I'm going down. I'm going to turn this over for you. There's no more meat. That, what I just held up, and I will hold it up again, is what's left of the pork chop. There is no smell. If I pick that up and sniff it, it smells like roadkill, because it is. It's decaying meat. This material does not smell. My hand will smell only from touching it. I'm going to back up here for a minute, and then we'll continue. I'm going to continue because what I'm going to do, actually I'm going to move this aside. Let's follow it with our eyes to where I put it, just to look at the rest. Now this bin right now is, like I said, the castings are spectacular from all the activity. We already seen worms in the hole. It's very dry, and the reason it's so dry is we had quite an intense heat up from when that meat was originally put in here raw, right? That's what happens. It heats up. Avocado pit. So it steamed it, more or less is what it did, making it even more flavorful for the worms, I'm sure. But that heat, well, it dries out the bin. And since I allowed this to operate as it would in nature, I didn't come in and continue to add water. I'm digging down, and I'm seeing as I'm turning it up now, there's worms down deeper. And these are the critters that were feeding on it from underneath. See, we're in the center. Let me back up. Avocado, another avocado, covered in worms. See if I can zoom out. Okay, here we go. Let me back way up so you can see that I'm in the center of the bin. You saw where I took the thermometer out of. And I am up to my elbow deep. And other than really well-fed, beautiful, look at this beautiful red wiggler right there. I'm sorry, folks, but that's a beautiful worm. Really healthy, really well-fed worms. There is no odor. The castings are better. There's still moisture down here. Look at that. Now this is from nothing more than a pork chop. The comfrey is growing without moisture and light. And the worms have moved into the warm zone because, of course, they were devouring the pork chop. Now, one good test of proof. Do you see these two guys? If you remember the last update I did, they were sniffing like crazy hounds. Well, they are crazy hounds. There's no smell. There they are. There's my foot. Here's me in the urban worm bag. There's no smell coming off this. So if that doesn't show you how quickly meat... So what I'm going to do, meat decomposes and gets eaten. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pick this back up and we're going to take another look at it. So here's the bone. I'm going to see if I can't get the original image, figure out how to do that on the phone. I believe I can. Here's some of the meat. Attached at the top. There's a little bit of meat over here. Gizmo, come here. Come here, girl. Gizmo, come here. Come see. Come see. Let's see what my dog thinks of this. Petey, look. What do you think? No, you're not going to eat it. No, it's for the worms. Petey, does this smell good? No, you can't eat it. See, it's still good enough for them. Remember, folks, my dogs and cats, you can hear one howling, are 100% raw fed. I don't decompose their food, but they would eat it, and so would yours. You give a dog a bone that's full of marrow, what do? They go out and bury it, and then go back months later when it's rotten, and dig it up and eat it. And this is no different. Okay, so here's the pork chop bone, and other than... Max, be quiet. Sorry. Other than a little bit of bone around, excuse me. I had my grandson all weekend, so my brains are fried. Other than a little meat around the bone, the meat is gone. You can see it's still raw. I don't really want to make this any easier for the worms, but I want to try to let you see it. I'm pushing it back a little bit here. See the gooey? It's just basically a slimy mess. And this is what's left. What has it been, a week? Look at that too. Okay, so we had that. And then we had this piece that's coated in material. And this little piece that's coated. And folks, there's nothing else. I expected this update to be like, oh wait, no, we do. This is compacted, so we have this. Now, in 3 days, I can guarantee you, it is now Sunday at 9 p.m. Wednesday at 9 p.m. This bone will be as clean stripped as you could imagine. And you can see here, there's an Indian blue worm heading down. There's all kinds of baby African night crawlers heading down, the worms that love the heat. But it's not very hot. Yes, the cat eats raw meat too. So the cat's like, hey, I didn't get a chance to sample that. Max, say hi. Look at this. Now I've got a pack of hungry wolves. Actually, they're a pack of non-hungry, well-fed wolves that I've tempted. Bury that. You saw it. You saw it happen. Mango. Now at this point, no, I was going to say I'm going to give these guys some food because I know this bin is basically starving. But I want to do the last update without the addition of any food. So they're going to live for another 3 days. I can assure you, I'm not going to dig in it today, but on Wednesday we will. I can assure you that this bin is now completely finished to the bottom of the bin. Like, no food of any kind or even bedding left. I could harvest this whole bin, and other than the few pieces of paper, there's nothing in here. Nothing that they could break down any further. And the reason for that is, as you saw, all the worms that were around the rim, mostly the first update, more so the second update actually, and much less this update. Here, see down deeper? The worms have been going deeper and deeper as this bin has begun to cool down after the pork chop got consumed, looking for food. They ate everything on the top. The raw meat put them in a feeding frenzy mode. All they want is like kill, 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 like a drop of blood in the ocean where there's a shark. Well, all the other sharks are going to come circle it. and it puts these guys into a feeding frenzy. But there's only one pork chop, and it's too hot initially. So what do? They eat everything they can, and they will go down the sides where it stays cool. And that's why we're seeing so many along the sidewalls. Let me see if I can show you this as I drag it up. So they go down the sides where it's cool, looking for food down deep. So although this bin and any other flow-through bin are normally top feeding worms, if you don't have food and they get into a feeding frenzy, which is what I call this, they are going to go deep. And hold on 1 second, I want to unzip this. I want to show you this side. Okay, so now I'm at what would be up against me as I'm facing the bin. I'm digging down deeper. Yeah, you see the worms are coming up. So they stopped surface feeding because other than a little bit of paper, again, look at how fine these castings are. This is like, it's almost like puffy. Reminds me of mushroom spores. It has no weight to it. And let's see. Here we go. See, this was deeper still. And these are all beautiful, beautiful top feeding worms that are heading down the sides in search of food. And I am certain if I open the bottom of this right now, this entire bin is now done. There is nothing left because there are so many worms in here. Yep, that was a statement. So many. And the fact that they've moved from the top down deep tells me that they've done what they're supposed to do. Because there's about 10 pounds, there's about 10,000, maybe 12,000 worms in this bag. And I'm sorry, I always forget to move the camera along with my hand. I'm just digging. Let's dig up the comfrey root, see what's lingering around it. Dry and done. And fat, happy, healthy worms. So folks, while I'm not saying it's affordable or sensible to keep our worms on a diet of raw meat, if you have raw meat, perhaps like me, well, if I leave something thawed out too long, I give it to the dogs because they get raw meat daily. But if you're one of the people that don't feed raw, you leave something thawed out too long, never be afraid to put it in your worm bin. You saw how quick that went. And I'm not done. I'm going to show you the follow-up because 3 days after, so on Wednesday, that bone that's right about here now, the center, will have nothing left on it but a piece of bone. I know this because I've done it dozens of times. And then a week from then, the bone will have a bunch of holes through it, and it will become powder-like. They basically turn it into bone meal. See, they're going down the sides. They're so hungry. 10,000 worms in one pork chop was like, I should have put in a pork roast. Look at these. Heading down the sides where it was cool, and found out it got cool enough to head towards the pork chop, but there's no pork chop left, except a teeny bit. Oh, look at this. Ooh. Ooh, nice, happy, healthy worms. I see Indian blues, African nightcrawler, a red wiggler, a euro. A nice sight that is. So there was no devastation, no die-off. I'm just flipping material up so you can see that the worms are all alive. They're happy. They're healthy. They're hungry, but I'm not going to feed them for a few more days because I want to do this final update. Now, I'm still going down the side. You can see how much deeper I am, and the worms are still coming up. And do you see how finished all of this is? There's a few pieces of cardboard, but this right now could go into the garden exactly as it is with the pieces of paper, because all of these pieces of paper, all of these remnants, they're completely coated, saturated in castings. And I have found in my experience that actually not screening castings for your own personal use, not for sale, I'll get to that here in a second, but for your own personal use is better than screening it, leaving some bedding in. And I'll tell you why. This material, the brown paper, the cardboard, the seed pods, paper bags, office paper, whatever it is we're feeding the worms, we also use it whenever we give a big feeding, right? We throw in a handful of bedding or paper, and then we throw in a wet food. Why? Because it absorbs water. Well, if you leave some of the bedding, unfinished cardboard, such as this piece here, in your garden, and you spread these castings, this will help keep the moisture in your garden, because just as it holds moisture in a worm bin, it retains moisture in your garden. So the more unfinished bits of brown material you have in your castings, the less often you're going to have to water your garden, because this holds moisture. And what I've also found is if you don't screen, okay, so on the opposite spectrum, if you're someone who does screen, let's say you're someone that screens your castings really well. You don't leave anything finished behind, but you miss a few cocoons. No material. Just happen to leave a few cocoons. When those cocoons hatch, what I have found is if there's some material, unfinished bedding, you're going to have a whole bunch of worms at the end of the season. If there was no bedding in there, nothing for them to really eat, you dig in there later and you're going to find a few worms, but they're going to go searching for food as soon as they hatch, because that's what worms do. And if we leave our contents sterile, pretty bagged, ready for sale on the shelf with a window envelope, that isn't providing life for the worms that may have been missed, the cocoons that are going to hatch, and even more so, leaving some of the bedding attracts the wild wigglers. And you've all seen my videos. I hope you have. If you didn't, there's a playlist on catching wild wigglers. And there's no secret to it. Leaves or cardboard, and the wigglers come to it. So I find whenever I leave bedding in my castings, I have much better garden results than when I don't. It holds the moisture, it is saturated with castings, it attracts beneficial insects, it attracts wild worms, it provides food for any worms you may have missed, it provides food for any hatchlings of cocoons you may have missed, and it breaks down in the soil, and it just makes all the sense. Now I say, for those of you who don't screen, or for those of you that do, I understand there's people in the business of selling castings. And it looks like here's another mango pit here, but not much. It's pretty much stripped. There's those of you that are in the business, and people want the fine screen stuff, you know, down to a 32nd inch or something. I think those people don't understand the value of having these little sticks, these little twigs, pieces of paper in there. They don't, you know, they want the aesthetics. And, you know, I understand that that's the market we're catering to. But as for me, you know, I want things to be natural, not aesthetically eye-pleasing. And I know from raising worms that what do worms want to stay in place? They want moisture and they want food. What do they want if they're outside? They want moisture, they want food. What does your garden want? It wants moisture and it wants food. If you leave pieces of cardboard or paper in your castings, it holds moisture and the pieces continue to break down, offering the worms in the soil food. So, in my personal opinion, castings with unfinished bedding is better for the garden than castings without. And I've been doing this since 1987, and I've learned a few things along the way, and I've done a lot of experiments, made a lot of mistakes, and have learned a few things that just, after you think about it, it's like, yeah, you know what, that makes sense. Yeah, why, if the bedding holds moisture in a bin, why wouldn't it do that out there? If the bedding provides food for worms in your bin, why wouldn't it, little comfrey root sprouting, why wouldn't it do it in the garden? Well, it does. Well, so you've seen, I did a really good stir through here while I was talking here, just to show there's no pieces broken up. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get our thermometer. Oh, this is a worm experiment I haven't yet filmed yet. Sneak peek. I'm going to get our thermometer and put it back. Now it's down to 70 degrees. It's got some dirt on it. It's down to room temperature now because I had it out. Well, it's down to, of course now I'm holding it under the light. I asked Santa to bring me new eyeballs for Christmas, and he didn't. Yep, okay, so it's down to just under 70 degrees. 65, oh, because it's between my fingers. Okay, yeah, so I'm just showing you that it's working, that the 100 degree wasn't a fluke. That was the temperature, and it was pretty warm. And now that I've stirred and fluffed, folded, spindled, mutilated, old post office term, you can take a look at the top, and what you'll see is some healthy worms, some really fine castings, a very small amount of unfinished bedding, a bin that is in need of water, which I am going to give it a little water. I just went out and collected a bottle of rainwater because it's all it's been doing is raining. And on Wednesday, when we go in to do the final check of the bone, I will go ahead and feed them at that time. I have some food ready. So it's back up to 82 now already. And that, I would say that's about right. It's probably about 88 degrees in the dead center right now. And part of that is because it's so dry. Plus I have this blazing lamp right over it right now. So, all right, folks. Well, I hope this video gave you the information you were expecting or anticipating, and I will be doing another, probably final follow-up on Wednesday, where we look at the remnants of the bone. There'll probably one more after that. I'll show you how the bone powder or bone meal develops from the bone that they're going to devour, and we'll feed the worms. The hungry wolves will get some food. Have a wonderful night.